Today, we'll be listening to the confession of Melissa, who was taken advantage of by her stepfather. If you also have a confession to share, you can send it to the account shown on the screen. Without further ado, let's dive into the confession. Hello, my name is Melissa. I have a very challenging life story. While browsing on YouTube, I came across this channel where people were sharing their life stories. I asked myself, why don't I share mine as well? I actually hate remembering the past, but I feel compelled to share it. When you hear about what my stepfather and then my cousin did to me, you'll be shocked. All of this is a true story, and I thought that sharing it might give me some peace. I only remember it about once a week, and every time, it leaves me devastated. I'm now 27 and married. There have been many traumas, but I found a husband who truly deserves me. I love him dearly, and we have a child. Unfortunately, the doctor says we won't be able to have more children, so we cherish our only child immensely. My husband changed my life, and I owe him everything. He took me off the streets and gave me a home. I'm incredibly grateful to God. Without him, I might have ended up as a streetwalker. He loved me at a time when I hated myself, and my life changed. I've gone through a lot, and I'll tell you everything step by step. This is my life, and it's a serious matter. As I said, my name is Melissa. I was born in Berlin, Germany, and lived there until I was 5 years old. I was the only child. When I was 5, my father passed away due to an illness. My mother wasn't working, and it was my father who provided for us. Life in Germany was difficult for my mother, so we decided to return to Turkey. Those were very hard days for my mother, and she cried every day because she and my father loved each other dearly. My mother understood that it was hard to care for me alone, but as I was young, I didn't understand much. However, as I grew older, I realized how much I needed him. When I was 7, my mother saw that it was difficult to raise me alone, so she remarried. The man was a relative from Trabzon and quite a troubled character. I never warmed up to him. Initially, he tried to be kind to me, but he never succeeded. We lived in a village in Trabzon, which was very different from Germany. I couldn't dress as I wanted or go out whenever I wished. After my mother remarried, her attitude toward me changed too. She no longer loved me, and she argued with me no matter what I did. I was always at fault. My uncle lived in the house next door, and he was a fool. He would drink every day and start fights at home, cursing non-stop. By the time I was 12 or 13, I'd heard every insult imaginable, which destroyed my mental health. These were the worst years of my life. That despicable stepfather of mine sometimes helped me with my studies, and I got used to it. In Germany, I used to walk around the house in shorts, and I did the same in Trabzon, though I could never wear them outside. Once, when I did go out like that, my mother beat me. I was fed up with this family. Anyway, one day while studying, my stepfather approached me and put his hand on my leg. I asked him to remove it, but he didn't. Instead, he began to stroke my leg. Tears filled my eyes, and I started to cry. My mother wasn't home, and I yelled, "Don't touch me, you dirty man." He glared at me with a sideways look. I quickly left the room and went to a corner to cry. My stepfather came again and began threatening me, saying he would kill me if I told anyone. He said, "Don't think foolish things, you're like a daughter to me." But I knew his intentions were different. I couldn't recover for a week, and I told no one about it. However, my drunk uncle somehow found out about it and, a week later, came to our house and cursed at me non-stop. I was in my room crying, and my mother came in, calling me a shameless girl, and beat me with a stick until I had marks on my hands and waist. They insulted me because I was slightly overweight. I was crying and had nothing to do. It was clear to me that I didn't belong in this house anymore. I had to leave, but I didn't know where I could go. Every day was like hell, and I hated myself. I prayed daily, wishing I had been born a boy. There was a bus going to Ankara on the weekend, and I planned to leave early in the morning. I stole 500 TL from my mother and left immediately. I decided to go to my aunt's house in Ankara. When I arrived, I told my aunt everything, hoping she'd understand. But she treated me just like my mother did. I was starting to hate everyone and felt on the verge of ending it all. At 16, I was completely alone in the wilderness. After staying with my aunt for 2 months, they started to see me as a burden, and they hated me. Eventually, I found a job at a restaurant, working as a waitress, and I left my aunt's house. But I needed to stay on good terms with her so she would accept me whenever I needed. I moved into the attic room at her place. The days were tough, and each day felt heavier than the last. My aunt had 2 sons, and one of them was still in school. One day, my cousin came home earlier than usual and saw me at home. He started accusing me, asking, "Why are you home? Did you steal something?" He started shouting, "We're sick of you. Get out of our house." Then he came over and started to touch me, grabbing me by the throat. I pushed him with my knee, grabbed my bag, and ran out. That was the end of it. I had no business being in that house anymore. I ran, crying, to a friend's place and asked if I could stay there. I spent 2 months like this, surviving in a makeshift manner. I was fed up and found a job listing in Bodrum where I'd be cleaning a villa. Once my application was accepted, I left Ankara behind. Even in Bodrum, I faced similar things. There were a few male workers around, and I cleaned at certain hours. Trying to start a new life, I thought maybe I'd find someone to love. I was so starved for love and affection that one of the workers took an interest in me, and we started as friends, then became romantically involved. For a year, we were together, and he said loving words I had never heard in my life. After a year together, I got pregnant. But once I told him, his attitude changed completely. He pressured me to get an abortion, insisting that he didn't want the baby. At the time, I wasn't even sure I was pregnant, as I'd never gone through anything like this. One day, while cleaning, I felt dizzy and fainted. The other workers took me to the doctor, who confirmed I was indeed pregnant. When I told my boyfriend, he pressured me even more to terminate the pregnancy, showing no concern for me. I kept working while pregnant, and finally, after much insistence, he gave me the money, and I had the abortion. By then, I had suffered countless blows, and my trust in people was completely gone. After that, I lived in Konya for 3 years on my own, struggling with loneliness, but it eventually became unbearable. At the age of 26, I met a man who changed my life. He was the owner of one of the houses where I worked as a cleaner. He was single and had fallen in love with me when he saw me. He took care of me, and eventually, we got married. I gave him a child, and we both adore our little one. My husband is 10 years older than me, but that doesn't matter. I love him with all my heart, he's the meaning of my life, and I always prioritize family. I do everything in my power to ensure that my child never experiences what I went through. This is my life story. I hope you've listened to everything. Hello, I'm from a village in Elazig. My aunt has only one son, and she arranged for him to marry before he went to military service. That's when I met their daughter-in-law, Melissa, for the first time, on their wedding night. Something awakened in me that night. After my cousin left for military service, I would often hang around their house just to catch a glimpse of Melissa. We would make small talk, smoke together, and I wanted to be with her all the time. I didn't know how to confess my feelings. People thought I was pursuing a girl from the neighborhood, but I was actually visiting to see Melissa. One day, feeling down, I went to my aunt's house. She wasn't home, and Melissa was alone, doing chores. "Welcome, Matt. Are you here to see that girl from the neighborhood?" she asked, inviting me in. "No," I replied. "I'm in love with someone, but she's hard to reach." "Why is that?" she asked, surprised. "Because she's married," I said. Melissa was taken aback and warned me to be careful, saying it could damage my reputation in the village. "I don't care," I said. "So who's the lucky woman?" she asked. I didn't give her a name, but I changed the subject to her husband. Do you miss him? I asked. How could I not? It's been 3 months since he left, she replied. He'll be back soon. I love him very much. When I asked, how much do you miss him, she laughed and went inside, realizing what I was implying. A few days later, Murad came home on leave, and this situation hurt me deeply. When he left again, I felt closer to Melissa. A month passed, and then I went to Istanbul and returned. The first thing I did upon my return was go to my aunt's house. Melissa was delighted to see me. Welcome back, Matt. Where have you been? She asked. I said I had business to attend to. My aunt was away visiting relatives, so I sat on the balcony and lit a cigarette. Melissa came over and sat beside me, and I handed her a cigarette too. She asked about my love life, and I said, I'm in love with someone, but I can't tell her. Forget it, Matt, she laughed. Anyway, does Murad call you? Do you keep in touch? I asked. It's been 6 months since he left. We've only talked a few times, and those conversations were brief, she said, clearly missing him. If you ever need anything, just let me know, I offered. All right, thank you, Mr. Matt, she chuckled. An idea struck me. I had picked up a magazine meant for adults in Istanbul, and, with a burst of courage, I took it out and handed it to her. Here, keep this safe and read it later, I said. She took it without looking, tucking it away. I stayed a bit longer and then left. 2 days later, I visited again. My aunt was just heading out to the garden. Once she left, Melissa came over, laughing. Are you crazy? What was that magazine? She teased. What can I say? That's just how we are, I laughed. I thought you had another married friend to visit and take your mind off things, she joked, hinting that I should find someone else. I smiled and said, that person is you. She froze, and after a moment of shock, said, what are you saying? This is impossible. Get out of here and don't come back. I replied, all right, but let me kiss you just once, and I'll never bother you again. She refused and ran, but I followed. Please, just once, I pleaded. She hesitated and finally agreed, saying, only once. That was how it all began. Melissa kept avoiding me afterward, saying it could never happen again or there would be serious consequences. Reluctantly, I had to give up. Third confession. Hello, I'm Alan. I live in Kayseri, and I'm 22. I'm athletic and handsome, and there's a neighbor in my building, Sarah, who's about 37 or 38, around 5 feet 5 inches, and very attractive with a well-kept appearance. I've always admired her. Sarah's beauty is captivating, especially in the way she moves, and I've always desired to be with her. Although I've had many experiences with women, I'm particularly drawn to women in the older age group. Sarah is married and has a child, and her husband, Harvey, is a truck driver. We don't interact much, but when we do see each other, we greet each other as neighbors do. One day, I was waiting for my friends outside the building when Sarah returned from the store. She greeted me, then did something unusual. She came over to chat, asking how I was, if I had a job, and so on. I must have shown my nervousness because she smiled and said, "Why are you nervous, Alan?" I replied, "I've never really talked to you like this, Sarah." She laughed and said, "That's cute." As boldly as I could, I asked, "Can I have your number, Sarah?" She paused, a bit surprised. "Why do you need my number?" she asked. "To call on holidays or something," I said, trying to play it off. She laughed again and said, "If I give it to you now, the neighbors might get the wrong idea. Why don't you come over this evening when Harvey's out, and I'll give it to you. We can have tea." My heart was pounding. I could hardly wait for the evening. Finally, evening came, and I went to her door, feeling like my heart was about to jump out of my chest. When she opened the door, she invited me in. "Would you like tea or something cold?" she asked. "Something cold, I'm burning up inside," I joked, and she laughed. She brought some sodas and joined me on the couch. I was too nervous to pay attention to her outfit. But as she sat across from me, I noticed she was wearing a tight black pair of pants and a blouse. After taking a sip, she looked at me and asked, "So, why did you want my number?" I said, "It just felt right." She chuckled, "You seem to act on whatever you feel like doing." "Yes, I do," I replied confidently. "All right, then what are you feeling right now?" she asked, with a mischievous smile. The direction was clear now. "I want you, Sarah," I admitted. She paused, smiled, and said, "Well, now's not the time, Alan," before pulling me into a hug. I didn't leave that night. She was elegant and gentle, a truly wonderful woman. We continued seeing each other a few more times, but one day, she told me, we should stop. If Harvey finds out, things could go badly. And that's the end of that story.